What if I told you that a single US law, passed with good intentions, helped crash the global economy, triggered massive unemployment, and gave a boost to the rise of fascism across Europe? Sounds dramatic, right? But that's exactly what happened in 1930 when the United States enacted the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, a law meant to protect American farmers and manufacturers during a recession. Instead, it kicked off a worldwide trade war and turned a bad economy into a disaster. And here's the scary part. Many of the arguments behind that law, we're hearing them again today. Let's rewind a bit. The 1920s, also known as the Roaring Twenties, were a time of huge economic growth in the US industry was booming, cars were rolling off assembly lines, and Wall Street was soaring. But under all that optimism, the economy was built on shaky foundations. Farming, for example, had been struggling for years. Prices for crops like wheat and cotton were falling, and small farmers were drowning in debt. Meanwhile, income inequality was growing, and much of the economic boom was driven by speculation. Then came October 1929. The stock market crashed. Trillions were wiped out. Banks failed. Businesses closed. And people panicked. As unemployment began to rise and confidence collapsed, politicians were under pressure to do something. At the time, the logic seemed simple. If American businesses are struggling, let's raise tariffs to make foreign goods more expensive. That way, consumers would be more likely to buy American. Enter two U.S. congressmen, Senator Reed Smoot and Representative Willis C. Hawley. They introduced a bill that would sharply increase tariffs on thousands of imported goods, from agricultural products to industrial machinery. The idea was to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition during a time of crisis. But many economists, including over 1,000 who signed a joint letter, warned that it would backfire. They argued that it would provoke retaliation, harm U.S. exports, and deepen the economic downturn. Unfortunately, their warnings were ignored. On June 17, 1930, President Herbert Hoover signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act into law. It raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported items, with average duties climbing to nearly 60%, the highest in U.S. history at the time. The intention? To protect domestic jobs and help American farmers and manufacturers survive the Great Depression. The result? A trade war that shook the world. Countries around the world weren't just going to sit back and take the hit. Canada, the United States' largest trading partner at the time, immediately retaliated with its own tariffs. Then France, Britain, Germany, and others followed suit. Tariff after tariff. Wall after wall. Instead of helping anyone, global trade began to collapse. Between 1929 and 1933, world trade fell by over 60%. U.S. exports, which had been a vital part of the economy, dropped by more than half. Companies that relied on foreign markets went bankrupt. More jobs were lost. Consumer goods became more expensive. And just like that, the entire global economic engine seized up. Smoot-Hawley didn't cause the Great Depression, but it definitely poured gasoline on the fire. Unemployment in the U.S. soared from under 10% in 1930 to 25% by 1933. Breadlines grew longer. Entire industries collapsed. And because other countries were also suffering, they had no money to buy American goods, even if tariffs hadn't existed. At the same time, nations became more inward-looking. Rather than working together to fix the global economy, they isolated themselves with protectionist policies.
Sound familiar?
Was there any winner in this economic mess? Well, sort of. A few regimes used the chaos to tighten their control. The Soviet Union, for instance, had already isolated itself from global trade under its centralized economy. As the world collapsed, the USSR just kept grinding forward with its 5-year plans. While not efficient, it meant that they weren't directly affected by the tariff war. Colonial powers like Britain and France retreated into their empires, creating exclusive trade zones. Think of it as forming economic cliques. These blocs helped them survive, but at the expense of exploiting their colonies even further. Meanwhile, in Germany and Italy, the economic collapse helped fuel the rise of fascist leaders who promised to restore national pride and economic strength. Adolf Hitler, for example, gained support by blaming Germany's misery on international trade, banks, and treaties. The lesson here isn't that trade is always good and protectionism is always bad. The lesson is that economic nationalism, when taken to the extreme, can destroy the very economy it's trying to save. Smoot-Hawley turned what could have been a painful but short recession into a global economic catastrophe. It shattered trust between nations. It killed millions of jobs. And it laid the groundwork for political radicalization. Let's fast forward to 2024. The US is once again talking about high tariffs, this time on Chinese electric vehicles, solar panels, semiconductors, and more. Politicians on both sides of the aisle are pushing for Buy American policies and using national security as the justification. The goals are understandable: bring manufacturing home, reduce reliance on foreign powers, and protect workers. But the risks are real too. Retaliation from other countries, higher prices for consumers, reduced competitiveness for American companies, and a global economy that starts to break apart again. The more walls we build, the harder it is to collaborate. And when nations stop cooperating, the result is rarely peace or prosperity. No, we're not in the 1930s. Today's economy is more complex, and we have more tools than ever to avoid collapse. But the mindset is starting to sound familiar. Blame foreign countries, close the doors, put national pride over global cooperation. It may win votes, but it can also cost us far more than we realize. So, what can we learn from Smoot-Hawley? That panic-driven policies can have unintended consequences. That protectionism may help in the short term but hurt in the long run. And that once a trade war starts, it's very hard to stop. Before we repeat history, maybe it's worth understanding it first. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, give it a like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments. Do you think modern tariffs are justified, or are we risking another economic disaster?